He needed a well-deserved break from the relentless demands of his career. My name is Ethan Caldwell, 34 years old, and I serve as a procurement specialist for agricultural machinery at Ironwood Forge, a leading supplier in the industry. For the past 3 months, I dedicated myself to crafting an extraordinary vacation for my parents, a meticulously planned 7-day escape to New Zealand. The itinerary included business-class flights, stays in opulent lodges with panoramic views of Lake Taupo, exclusive private tours through the lush vineyards of Marlborough, and a breathtaking helicopter journey to Milford Sound, a destination my mother had cherished in her dreams since childhood. Captivated by the allure of its majestic fjords, at 4:00 a.m., I eased my truck into their Denver driveway, the engine purring softly in the pre-dawn chill, ready to drive them to the airport for their early departure. This wasn't just a trip, it was my heartfelt expression of gratitude, a chance to forge enduring memories with my parents, Margaret and Harold Caldwell, before I embarked on a significant career move to Berlin, where I would assume a leadership role in our company's European operations. The relocation would place an ocean between us, and I wanted to seize this moment to strengthen our bond before the distance grew. As I waited, my mother emerged from the house, pulling 2 suitcases down the path, her face illuminated by a nervous smile that I knew too well, a signal of impending bad news. Behind her trailed my Uncle Clyde, 58 years old, a man who hadn't held steady employment in over a decade, carrying a tattered duffel bag with the casual air of someone heading to a weekend getaway. "Where's Dad?" I asked, lowering the truck's window. Inside, she replied with forced brightness, "We've had to adjust our plans slightly." Then my father appeared, clapping Clyde on the shoulder with the warmth of old comrades embarking on a shared adventure. "Son," Harold said, approaching my window with the authoritative tone he used when decisions were non-negotiable, "your uncle's been under considerable stress lately. He lost his warehouse job last month, and we believe this trip could lift his spirits. He'll be joining us in your place." The words hit me like a cold gust. "I'm sorry, what?" I stammered. "We've already amended the ticket with the airline." My mother added, loading Clyde's bag into my trunk as if it were a routine task. "You'll understand one day, Ethan. Besides, your job keeps you traveling constantly." Clyde stood there, hands in his pockets, grinning as though this was the most natural arrangement, as though I hadn't invested my personal savings and vacation time to create a once-in-a-lifetime experience for my parents, as though he hadn't been relying on their financial support for years. Weaving tales of job prospects that never materialized, I didn't shout or storm off. Instead, I sat frozen, my hands gripping the steering wheel, watching my breath fog the windshield in the crisp Denver morning. "All right, then," I said finally, my voice steady but hollow. "Enjoy your trip." The drive to the airport was suffocatingly silent, interrupted only by Clyde's animated chatter about his long-standing desire to explore the southern hemisphere. My parents nodded along, behaving as if this had been the plan all along, as if I were merely their driver. I unloaded their luggage at the departures terminal, assisted them to the curb, and watched as they walked away. My mother glanced back once, offering a fleeting wave. My father didn't look back at all. Something fractured within me that morning, a subtle but profound crack in the foundation of our relationship, though I couldn't yet comprehend its full impact. Growing up, Clyde was the charismatic uncle who captivated family gatherings with tales of his latest entrepreneurial scheme or romantic escapade. He'd worked in construction, tried his hand at insurance sales, ventured into landscaping, each endeavor ending with a ready excuse for its failure and an optimistic pitch for the next big opportunity. Over time, the charm of his stories faded, replaced by a tiresome pattern of excuses that grew increasingly difficult to overlook. My parents, however, seemed oblivious to this shift, or perhaps they chose to ignore it. When Clyde was evicted from his apartment 3 years ago, they welcomed him into their basement, insisting it was a temporary arrangement. When his truck was repossessed, my father signed for a new one without a second thought. When Clyde requested funds for supposed job training programs that never led to employment, my mother quietly slipped him cash, instructing him to keep it from me. I'd attempted to address the issue with them, starting with tactful suggestions and escalating to frank discussions. "He's family," my father would declare, his tone brooking no argument. "You don't abandon family. He's just going through a rough patch." My mother would add gently, "Everyone deserves another chance." By my reckoning, Clyde had squandered at least 15 such chances, but I'd learned to hold my tongue. They were adults, entitled to manage their finances and household as they saw fit. But this was different. I'd booked this New Zealand trip 6 months earlier, immediately after receiving the Berlin job offer. The company was covering my relocation expenses, but I wanted to create something deeply meaningful for my parents before I left the country. New Zealand had been my mother's dream destination since her youth. She'd amassed a collection of travel magazines about Queenstown and Rotorua, spoken wistfully of soaking in geothermal hot springs and strolling through wine country. I'd researched every detail with precision. A boutique lodge in Hawke's Bay where they could savor sunrises over sprawling vineyards, a dinner reservation at a prestigious restaurant overlooking Waiheck Harbor, and a private engagement with a Maori cultural group in Rotorua to satisfy my father's fascination with indigenous history. The entire trip had cost me nearly $15,000, a substantial sum for me, but one I deemed worth while to give my parents an unforgettable experience together, and they'd handed it over to Clyde. The signs had been there, subtle but unmistakable. Clyde had posed casual questions about the itinerary during a family dinner last month, feigning mild interest. My mother had been evasive when I inquired about their excitement for the trip, deftly changing the subject. My father had mentioned, almost in passing, that Clyde seemed particularly despondent lately and could use some cheering up. I should have anticipated this outcome, should have recognized that their unwavering empathy for Clyde's endless troubles would eclipse the gesture I'd poured my heart into. But I had trusted them. I had believed this trip held the same significance for them as it did for me. Now, driving home alone from the airport, the truth struck me with chilling clarity. In their eyes, Clyde's immediate needs would always supersede my efforts. The question was how I would respond. I sat in my truck outside their house for over an hour, the engine idling, the heater combating the February cold, staring at their empty driveway and replaying the moment they dismissed 3 months of my meticulous planning. It wasn't solely about the $15,000, though that was no trivial amount. It wasn't even entirely about Clyde receiving a vacation he hadn't earned. It was about their choice, prioritizing his chronic, undefined neediness over the thoughtful gift I'd crafted for them, without so much as a discussion. My phone vibrated, pulling me from my thoughts. A text from my mother, boarding now. "Thank you for understanding, honey. We'll send pictures," understanding, as if I'd nodded and said, "Of course, give my trip to Uncle Clyde." I drove home, sat at my kitchen table, and stared at the confirmation emails. Flights, hotels, restaurant bookings, all perfectly orchestrated. Then I opened a new browser window and began typing. I canceled the Hawke's Bay Lodge, the Queenstown Boutique Hotel, the Rotorua Spa Resort, watching my deposits return with each confirmation, the rental car gone, the restaurant reservations canceled, the Milford Sound helicopter tour canceled, the vineyard tours canceled. Each click felt like sealing a door they'd chosen not to enter. Then I drafted an email to New Zealand Immigration Services, professional, concise, detailing Clyde Caldwell, U.S. citizen, potentially entering with an unresolved legal matter in Colorado. It was factual. Clyde had mentioned an outstanding court case for unpaid fines at Christmas, laughing that the system was too slow to catch him. I included his full name, birth date, and flight details, suggesting a background check, and sent it at 11:00 p.m. Denver Thai, early morning in Auckland. Next, I contacted my travel agent and advanced my Berlin flight from next month to 3 days from now. The company had offered an early start. Now I needed it. I poured a whiskey and leaned back in my chair. No yelling, no dramatic confrontation. Just quiet, deliberate action. They'd valued Clyde's comfort over my effort. They could face the consequences. I raised my glass to the empty room. Enjoy New Zealand. I said softly, at 6:00 a.m., my phone rang, an international number. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again at 6:15, and I answered. Ethan, my father's voice weary and strained. We're at Auckland Airport. How's New Zealand? I asked, sipping my coffee. That's why I'm calling. There's a problem. They pulled Clyde aside at customs, saying there's an issue with his entry. I set my cup down slowly. What kind of issue? Something about unresolved traffic fines from last year. He said he was handling it through a lawyer, but it's showing up as unresolved. Clyde had no lawyer. He'd been dodging court summons for months, joking about it. My father didn't know. Where are you staying tonight? I asked. That's another issue. The hotel said our reservation was canceled, some system error. Same with the rental car. I gazed at the Denver skyline. All your reservations got canceled, every single one. The hotel showed us cancellation confirmations from yesterday. Everything's booked. Peak tourist season. How's Mom? She's upset. Keeps asking how this happened. Clyde's still with immigration. We don't know if they'll let him in. I heard my mother's voice in the background, tense, speaking to someone at an information desk. Maybe you should come home. I suggested. We can't leave Clyde here, and we spent so much on this trip. Your mom was really looking forward to it. Looking forward to the trip I'd planned for her, the one she'd given away. Dad, why didn't you talk to me before changing the plans, before giving Clyde my ticket? Silence. Then your uncle needed this, Ethan. He's been struggling since losing that job. You're young. You travel for work. You'll have other opportunities. This wasn't about opportunities. It was about spending time with you and Mom before I moved to Berlin. You'll visit. That's not the point. A long pause. Are you saying this is your fault, these reservation problems? I nearly laughed. Even now, stranded in Auckland with his brother, in law detained, he couldn't see that choices have consequences. No, Dad. I'm saying things work out as they're supposed to. That doesn't help us. We're stuck with no hotel, no car. Clyde might get deported. Your mother hasn't eaten since the flight. There are airport hotels. Expensive, but available. We can't afford those for a week, Ethan. Not after the flights. The flights they'd reassigned without consulting me. Maybe Clyde can help with costs since he wanted to come. He's unemployed, you know that. Then maybe this wasn't the right trip for him. What's gotten into you, Ethan? He was right. The old me would have flown to Auckland, booked new hotels, fixed their crisis, and pretended it was fine. But watching them walk away with Clyde in my place had shifted something. You'll figure it out, Dad. You, Mom, and Clyde are good at making decisions. I need to go. I'm flying to Berlin tomorrow, starting early. Tomorrow, you are leaving next month. Plans change, I said and hung up. My phone rang 16 times that day. I ignored every call. At Ironwood Forge, I finalized my projects, transferring responsibilities to colleagues. My supervisor, Janet, was surprised by my accelerated departure but processed the paperwork efficiently. Family emergency, she asked, family clarity. I replied. That evening, I packed clothes, books, and a few personal items. My house was already set to be rented furnished. The doorbell rang. Clyde's truck was in my driveway. He stood at my door, disheveled, looking like he'd been awake for 36 hours. They sent us back. He said without preamble, immigration flagged my background check. 6 hours of processing, then a return flight. I leaned against the doorframe. That's unfortunate. Your parents spent the flight wondering what went wrong. Canceled reservations, immigration issues. Your mom cried for 3 hours. Where are they now? Home, exhausted. Your dad's trying to get a refund from the travel insurance company. Clyde stepped closer, smelling of stale coffee and stress. Funny thing, the immigration officer mentioned a tip about my legal issues, specific details, my name, birth date, flight info, those old court fines. I stayed silent. Sounds like someone knew exactly when I'd arrive and why I'd have trouble. His bloodshot eyes met mine, sharp with realization. Why'd you sabotage your parents' trip? It wasn't their trip anymore, it was yours. They invited me, I didn't force my way in. No, you just moped around their house, talking about your stress and unemployment until they felt guilty enough to give you my trip. His jaw tightened. Those old people have carried you your whole life. College, your house down payment, bragging about your big job. When they ask one thing, helping family, you throw a tantrum. Helping family, Clyde, you've been jobless for 3 years, living rent. Free in their basement, borrowing their car, eating their food, letting my dad co. Sign your loans. When do you help them? I'm in a rough patch. Your rough patch started in the 90s. He stepped back, chewing on words he didn't say. Your parents are good people, better than you deserve. You're right, they're too good to see you're using them, too generous to notice you take everything and give nothing. So you ruined their trip to teach them a lesson. I showed them what happens when they choose your comfort over my effort. Clyde walked to his truck without another word. I finished packing. Tomorrow Berlin, tonight I slept better than I had in months. At 7:00 a.m., my phone rang as I loaded my last suitcase into the truck. Ethan, my father's voice, flat and tired, we need to talk. I'm heading to the airport, Dad. Clyde told us what you did. The immigration tip, canceling reservations, sabotaging the trip. Sabotaging? You gave my trip to someone else. I just ensured you got the experience you chose. Why would you do this to your mother? She didn't sleep, keeps asking what she did wrong. She didn't do anything wrong, neither did you. You made a choice. We were helping family. You were enabling Clyde like you have for 3 years. Silence. I pictured him in their kitchen, staring at Clyde's truck in the driveway, grappling with this mess. Your mother wants you to come over before your flight. There's nothing to talk about. She's your mother, Ethan. And I'm your son, the one who spent 3 months planning something special for you, who wanted memories before moving overseas. But that didn't matter when Clyde needed cheering up. We thought you'd understand. I do. I understand Clyde's feelings trump my gestures, that you'd rather fix his problems than value my efforts. I know where I stand. That's not fair. Fair would have been asking me before reassigning my trip, considering how I'd feel about my vacation going to someone who's never earned anything, recognizing I was trying to do something meaningful before leaving. I started my truck. My Berlin flight was in 4 hours. Ethan, please, your mother's heartbroken. Tell Mom I love her. I'll call from Berlin when I'm settled. What about Clyde? What about him? He's family. So am I, Dad. I hung up and drove away from my Denver life. At the airport, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from my parents. 2 texts from my mother asking me to reconsider. 1 voicemail from Clyde. I deleted them all. The 17-hour flight to Berlin was peaceful. I watched movies, and slept better than I had in weeks. In Berlin, a text from my father. Your mother understands why you're angry. Call when you're ready. I pocketed the phone, cleared immigration, claimed my bags, and headed to my new apartment. Understanding was a start, but changing behavior was another matter. I was 0 miles from their drama, ready to build something new. 3 weeks into my Berlin assignment, my phone rang during lunch. An international number. Ethan, my mother's voice clearer, steadier. Hi, Mom, how are you? Better, we need to tell you something. We asked Clyde to move out. I set my coffee down when? Last week, your dad found he'd been using our credit card $1,500 in electronics and clothes. He said he'd repay us with his next job. What next job? Exactly what your father asked. She paused. Clyde got defensive, said we were unreasonable, that family sticks together in tough times. He blamed you for turning us against him. Your dad said maybe we should have turned against you years ago. I watched Berlin traffic pass. We gave him 30 days to find a new place. He's with his friend Kevin now, acting like we kicked him out for no reason. How do you feel? Relieved and foolish. We should have seen what you saw years ago. You were being kind. We were naive. There's a difference between helping and being taken advantage of. What changed your mind? The trip. Sitting in Auckland, watching Clyde argue with immigration, blaming everyone but himself, realizing you'd warned us and we didn't listen. A pause. Your dad wants to talk. Put him on. His voice gruff but warmer. I owe you an apology. You don't, Dad. We took your gift and threw it away, treated your thoughtfulness like it didn't matter. You had every right to be angry. I wasn't angry, disappointed. Same result. We hurt you and you showed us what that felt like. I looked at the German streets below. Are we okay? He asked. We're okay. 6 months later, I flew to Denver for Christmas. My parents met me at arrivals with coffee and smiles. The drive home felt lighter, unburdened. My father asked about my work in Berlin. My mother wanted stories of Christmas markets and German cuisine. Clyde didn't come up until I asked. How's he doing? Working construction. My father said. Kevin got him a job. He thinks we'll invite him for Christmas dinner. Will you? They exchanged a glance. No. My mother said firmly, we're learning boundaries. That evening, we sat in their living room, flipping through old photo albums. Family trips, birthdays, holidays. Clyde appeared in many, always grinning, always the center of attention. You know what we want to do. My mother said suddenly, what? Take that New Zealand trip, the real one, as you planned it. Mom, you don't have to. We want to. My father interjected. With you when you can take vacation from Berlin. I pictured vineyard tours, fjord helicopter rides, sunrises over Hawke's Bay, sharing something beautiful, not managing someone else's chaos. I'd like that, I said. Later, I walked through their basement. Clyde's room was empty, just old furniture and boxes, clean and ready for something better. My phone buzzed. A colleague from Berlin. How's Denver? I typed back exactly what I needed. Sometimes, the best gift is showing people what's worth defending. As I settled into my new life in Berlin, I found a rhythm that felt both foreign and freeing. The city's vibrant energy, its blend of history and modernity, offered a fresh canvas to redefine my priorities. My work at the European division of Ironwood Forge was challenging but rewarding, with long hours spent negotiating contracts and exploring new markets. In quieter moments, I'd walk along the Spree River, reflecting on the events that had brought me here. My parents and I began to rebuild our connection through regular calls, our conversations shifting from the past to the future. They shared updates about their lives in Denver, my father's gardening projects, my mother's book club, and their excitement for our planned New Zealand trip grew with each discussion. We agreed to schedule it for the following year, when I could secure extended leave, and I found myself researching new details to enhance the experience, eager to share it with them as originally intended. Clyde's name rarely surfaced in our talks, his absence a quiet testament to the boundaries my parents had finally established. They mentioned he'd moved in permanently with his friend Kevin and was working sporadically in construction, but the details were vague, and I didn't press. The New Zealand fiasco had been a painful but necessary catalyst, exposing the toll of their unchecked generosity. My mother admitted, in a late-night call, that she'd always felt responsible for Clyde's struggles, seeing him as the younger brother who needed her protection. My father, more reserved, confessed he'd mistaken enabling for loyalty, a habit ingrained from their upbringing. These admissions, raw and unguarded, deepened my respect for them, even as I grieved the time lost to Clyde's influence. In Berlin, I built a small but meaningful circle of friends, colleagues who invited me to local beer gardens, a neighbor who shared her love of classical music, a running group that met at dawn in Tiergarten. These connections grounded me, reminding me that family isn't only inherited but chosen. Yet I carried my parents with me in small ways. A photo of us at my college graduation on my desk, my mother's recipe for chili recreated in my tiny apartment kitchen. The distance, both physical and emotional, had clarified what mattered most, not the act of giving, but the mutual respect that sustains it. By the time I returned to Denver for Christmas, the fracture from that February morning had begun to mend. We spent the holiday reminiscing, laughing over old stories, and planning our New Zealand adventure. My parents' home felt different, lighter, unburdened by Clyde's presence. The basement, once his makeshift refuge, was now a storage space for my father's tools and my mother's craft supplies, a symbol of reclaimed space. As I boarded my flight back to Berlin, I felt a quiet certainty that we'd weathered the storm, not by erasing the past, but by choosing a future built on honesty and boundaries. The New Zealand trip loomed as a promise, not just of a destination, but of a relationship redefined, stronger for its scars. Back in Berlin, I resumed my life with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that sometimes the hardest lessons yield the deepest rewards.